Hi, today I am on the South Fork Janes Creek Loop Trail in Arcata in Humboldt County. Oh, this is my favorite time of year to come out here because it's fall and the colors of the changing leaves, and also this trail mostly follows along Janes Creek, which is filled with water from the season's first rains. You know, normally I give a lot of trail information right at the beginning of the show, but today I'm going to do things a little bit differently. I'll save all that for the end of the show so that we can get right to the scenery. So let's go. Oh, I'm so sorry to interrupt all that beautiful scenery, but one other thing I need to explain. Normally in these shows, I stop along the way and point out some interesting natural history. But today I really want to just focus on the amazing scenery on this trail. So I've asked my co-producer, if there's any point where I tend to go on a little bit too much, like I can do sometimes. I've asked her, just, you know what, take charge, fade me out of this scene, all right? But there's one thing I want to say before we move back to the scenery. That is, there are over 30 species of alders throughout the Northern Hemisphere. We are fortunate enough that in this forest, we have the largest one of them all, the red alder. And you know, since I talked a little bit about species and difference, now it's interesting how chromosomes can have slight differences in their genome sequence. Now, if you take the sequence, for example, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I just have to tell you this because this is a red alder tree right here. Red alders, they lose their leaves for the winter time. But what's really different about the red alders, when they cut loose with their leaves, they're still green. Now, the other trees that lose their leaves in the winter here would think that is so wasteful. Like the big leaf maple, for example, their leaves turn yellow or brown and then they fall off. And that's because the green color in these leaves are from chlorophyll, and chlorophyll is absolutely loaded with nitrogen. So what most trees do is before they cut loose with their leaves, they reabsorb all that chlorophyll out of the leaf back into the tree and the roots and store it in their tree bodies. And that nitrogen too, that's because nitrogen is in such short supply here in this forest. So it's a little tactic they do. But red alders don't do that. They cut loose with these leaves loaded with nitrogen that fall to the ground. So, big question is, why do red alders, why are they so wasteful with their green leaves? Well, to explain that, I need to give you a little bit of background on the nitrogen cycle. Okay, there's different types of nitrogen. There's nitrogen in the soil, but a lot of it is not available to the plants. It has to be, no, don't cut me out yet. I have to explain the nitrogen cycle. won't talk about the nitrogen cycle, but I do want to explain why the red alders can drop their nitrogen-rich green leaves onto the ground without extracting all that chlorophyll out of it, like the other trees have to do. It's because red alder make their own nitrogen. And how do they do it? Well, they have these little bacteria that live in nodules in their roots. And they feed these little bacteria sugars. In exchange, these little bacteria, they extract nitrogen from the air and convert it into a usable form for the red alder. And you got to imagine there's plenty of nitrogen in the air. It's 78% nitrogen, but the plants normally can't get that. So that's why the red alder is able to drop those green leaves and the other plants can't. Now, another interesting thing, they drop all these, or the red alder drop all these green leaves onto the ground that are loaded with nitrogen. That actually enriches the soil in the nitrogen. I am so sorry to interrupt again, but I just have to tell you this one. This is another little amazing trick these red alders have up their branches. When you walk along Jane's Creek, you see a lot of red alders growing right up to the creek, and they grow in wet, saturated soils around here. Well, most other trees cannot do that. They might land their seeds and root in conditions like that, but eventually the roots will get too waterlogged and they'll rot out, and then a wind will come along and blow the tree down, but not red alders. That's because red alders have these little air ducts that travel down into their roots so that all the cells in those roots can still survive in saturated wet conditions. Around the trunks of these red alders, there's these little cork type cells so that the air can pass from the atmosphere through the cork cells into the air passageways and go down and provide air for the whole root, even when it's completely saturated with water. And hey, I'm still here. Wow, okay, all right. Well, in that case, then I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna go a little bit further, cross my favorite bridge on this walk, and then I'm gonna turn around, come back, and then on the way back, I'm going to tell some more details for anyone who wants to know more information about this trail, you know, where you park and how long it is, that sort of thing. So, wow, all right, I'm still here. Okay, well, let's continue then. Okay, just a little bit of trail information for those who need it. I started this hike at a gravel parking lot in West End Road here in Arcata, Humboldt County, California. I followed the trail about 3/4 of a mile. That's the Ridge Trail, which is the northern end of the Arcata Community Forest Ridge Trail. I followed the Ridge Trail, and then after about 3/4 of a mile, there was a turnoff to the Janes Creek Loop Trail, where I am right now. And then I followed the Janes Creek Loop Trail for another half mile or so until I crossed the bridge that you saw me cross earlier, and then I came back here. Now, I could have gone after I crossed the bridge, I could have continued uphill into the Arcata Community Forest, but I chose to turn around and come back the same way. Now, it's also important to remember that the Janes Creek Loop is actually not in the Arcata Community Forest. It's on land that has been granted an easement by the Samuels family. So if you do come here, please respect the private property around here. It was generous enough of the Samuels family to grant the easement. And, gee, since I seem to have a little more time, let me go ahead and tell you about the nitrogen cycle, okay? The nitrogen cycle, there's different forms of nitrogen.